Hello, I'm David Lockwood, Extension Fruit and Nut Crop Specialist for the University of Tennessee. And today I'd like to talk with you about some unique home fruits. The first one we'll cover is elderberry. Elderberry is commonly found in a wide range of habitats. They prefer moist, well-drained, sunny sites. They're a nice crop because they have showy white flowers early in the year and bright purple blackberries later on in the summer. Elderberries may be used as landscape plants. They're a good backyard fruit source if you like edible landscaping. And both the fruit and flowers can be used for a variety of things, including wine, juice, food colorants, and dietary supplements. University of Missouri has been doing some work on elderberry production, and they have released two varieties. Bob Gordon and Wildwood are those. Prior to that time, the varieties that we had been around for many years. New York State released Adams in New York back in the early 1900s. The other selections we saw are out of Nova Scotia, Johns, Kent, Nova Scotia, and Victoria. Wild elderberry plants can give you a lot of fruit. However, with the wild plants, fruit quality may be variable as compared to a named variety. The next crop we'll look at will be pawpaw. Pawpaw is also known as poor man's banana or wild banana. The trees are temperate, native to North America, found from Long Island to Florida and west to Texas. They form in understories of other trees and will tolerate shade, especially early in their life. They like well-drained, fertile bottomland, but they will be also found some in hilly upland habitat. They spread by root suckers, but can be propagated by seeds or by transplants. They like moist, slightly acidic soils, but as said before, they can be grown in sun or shade. Their growth habit is round and moderately upright, with a tree giving a size of about 15 to 20 feet both in height and width. One of the nice things about pawpaw is that they have relatively few natural pests, and therefore they are natural for some of our home plantings. Pawpaw flowers and the twigs and bark have a disagreeable smell. The flowers tend to be relatively large, upwards of 2 inches across. They'll be pale green in color and then turn brown, purple, or maroon later on. Pawpaws are insect pollinated, and many people believe that cross pollination is needed and recommended to get the best fruit quality and the best crops. But few pollinating insects are attracted to the flowers of pawpaw. Pawpaw fruits are large, usually yellowish green to brown color, with the fruit being upwards of 3 to 5 inches in length. They are the largest edible fruit indigenous to the United States. The flavor is they're sweet, somewhat custard-like in texture, similar to banana, mango, and pineapple. They're commonly eaten raw. The seeds are black and easy to remove. They also are used in processing and can be used to make ice creams or bake desserts. The fruit has a relatively short shelf life and they'll ripen quickly to the point that they're overripe and fermenting. So it's important to use that fruit shortly after harvest. Fruits form in clusters on the tree. The flesh can range from yellow to orange color. They are an excellent source of vitamins A and C, also high in unsaturated fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. They contain more potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, and sulfur than apples, grapes, or peaches. We'll move on into persimmons. Persimmons are also were known by the ancient Greeks as fruit of the gods. And in Tennessee, depending on where you're located, we can grow both the Oriental persimmon and the American persimmon. The Oriental or Asian persimmon is referred to as khaki or Japanese or Oriental persimmon. They're the most common edible species of persimmon. The trees tend to be similar in shape to apple and can get to be quite tall, upwards of 30 plus feet. The young trees will start to crop somewhere around the third to sixth year of their life. They bloom late, so a late spring frost is not as devastating to those as it may be with other fruits. They ripen late as well. In fact, they ripen the fruit quite often after leaves drop in the fall of the year. So this means October, November, depending on where you are. They do need a subtropical to mild temperate climate. They don't tolerate cold weather too well. In the east, the persimmons area, the Oriental persimmons, are grafted onto American persimmon rootstock to get them off to a good start. Oriental persimmon varieties can be both astringent and non-astringent, and so it's important to know the non-astringent varieties include ones like Giant Fuyu, Hero, Suruga, whereas the astringent varieties are, as we see on this list. Again, it's important to know which type you've got, especially before you try to eat it. The American persimmon ranges from southern Connecticut or Long Island all the way to Florida and west of Texas. It is more cold hardy than the Asian or the Oriental persimmon tree. The selections that are currently available tend to be relatively inconsistent in fruiting. They may vary somewhat in ripening time and fruit quality, and that varying will be from region to region or year to year. American persimmon trees can get to be taller than the Oriental, upwards of 30 to even 75 feet in some cases. The lifespan of the tree, fairly long, 50 to 75 years. Again, with pests, there are not a lot of issues with the American persimmon. The fruit tends to be high in vitamin C and calcium. It's smaller fruited than the Oriental persimmon, fruit being fairly, well, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter. Test on persimmons. True or false? A hard frost is needed to ripen persimmons and remove the astringency. That actually is false. Not all persimmon varieties are astringent. Persimmon trees break dormancy late, they bloom late, and they ripen the fruit late. And often fruit ripening occurs at a time that is similar to the first frost in the fall. And so the idea that you need to have a good heavy frost before the fruits are edible came out of that characteristic. Another question, persimmon fruits will ripen off the tree. Some fruits will have to be ripened fully on the tree, or they never will ripen once they're removed. Others will continue to ripen once they're harvested. Persimmons will ripen off the tree. They're considered ready to pick when they lose the green color and they turn from yellow-orange to orange or orange-red in color. Once off the tree, the fruit should ripen within 7 to 10 days at room temperature. You can speed up ripening a persimmon by putting it in a paper bag with ripe bananas. The ripe bananas give off ethylene gas, which is a ripening hormone, and it will speed up the ripening of the persimmon. We'll move on to figs. Persistent or common figs have all female flowers that set fruit without pollination or parthenocarpically. We grow these in the east since the fig wasp needed for pollination does not exist in the eastern part of the U.S. The most common varieties of figs for the east include brown turkey, Celeste, and Chicago hardy. These figs can produce 2 crops a year. The breva crop is produced in the spring and it's produced on the previous year's growth. The main crop will develop on the current season shoot growth and will ripen in late summer to fall. And this main crop is generally superior both in quantity and quality to the breva crop. Figs are subject to winter injury in many years, and we can see that in this slide. On the left-hand side, we can see that last year's growth is killed back to the ground, and new shoots are starting to grow. When this happens, we've lost the breva crop. If we get good growth, and we may have a main crop that'll ripen late summer and fall. However, if we have an early fall, we may not get complete ripening of that fall crop. Currants and gooseberries are two crops that used to be illegal to grow in the eastern part of the United States, primarily because they were alternate host to white pine blister rust. And when they were trying to develop an industry with white pine, it was thought that if we eliminated planting our alternate host crops, we could lessen the problems with the white pine. This was found to be not necessarily that valuable, and also new varieties of currants were developed that were not susceptible to white pine blister rust. So we can grow black currants, red currants, white currants. There's also even a pink one. In Tennessee, this is not the case in all of our other states or counties in other states, so you need to check for regulations. But the black currants were actually not considered to be an edible fruit for many years in Europe. It was looked at as more medicinal. However, it does have some valuable characteristics as a fresh fruit, as do the red and white currants. Yields on a mature plant will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 pounds per bush, and will get to maturity about 3 to 4 years after planting. Currants will live somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 years, and that depends on weather conditions and cultural practices. They like a soil that's slightly acidic. Space them out about 4 or 5 feet apart in a row, and 8 to 10 feet or so between rows on the black, a little bit tighter maybe on the red and white. But we want to make sure that the plant gets plenty of sunlight so that it'll fruit well. As far as varieties, the red-fruited ones, Jonquière Vantet's, Red Lake, Red Star are 3. The white-fruited include Blanca, Primus, White Imperial, and White Versailles. Pink-fruited currants, Pink Champagne is the one I'm familiar with. And then in the black-fruited, we have Titania, Ben Alder, Ben Lomond, and Consort. Gooseberries, as I mentioned earlier, used to be illegal to grow like currants. That is not the case anymore, and it is a crop that can be grown in Tennessee. It's useful for making pies and jelly, or for fresh consumption. Gooseberries, like currants, are also relatively pest-free, so it makes a nice home crop. They are not real heat tolerant, and that can be a little bit of an issue in some of our summers, especially in some of the more southern parts of the state. But they do tend to be very winter hardy. Like currants, they like a soil that's slightly acidic. Varieties of currants, Clark, Fredonia, and Pixwell are 3 examples. Loganberry is a berry crop that we could look at. It's actually a hybrid of blackberry and raspberry. The plant and the fruits resemble blackberry more than they do raspberry. The fruits tend to be dark red in color and trailing in growth habit. The plants need a trellis to get them up off the ground. The plants are vigorous. While they are thornless, they actually have fine spines like a raspberry, so that can be a little bit of an aggravation. The fruit tends to be larger than most blackberries, and the fruit has the flavor of both raspberry and blackberry. Tayberry is another fruit to look at. It was named actually after the River Tay in Scotland, and it too is a raspberry by blackberry cross. The fruit is sweeter and much larger and more aromatic than the loganberry, and it has a sweet tart flavor. Plants are less hardy and less susceptible to pests than our raspberries, but it will grow in fruit in Tennessee. Hello, I'm David Lockwood, Extension Fruit and Nut Crop Specialist for the University of Tennessee. And today I'd like to talk with you about some unique home fruits.